Okay, so I'm going to tell you about the house on Ault Road, A-U-L-T. And let me just set this up so you can understand where Ault Road is in Knoxville. So if you get off the exit at Rutledge Pike, exit 392, and you turn left onto Ault, you do this little dog leg, you go up and over the railroad tracks, and then you go up the hill. All right, Ault Road is the main road that connects Rutledge Pike to Buffett Mill. Yeah, Buffett Mill, not Washington Pike, Buffett Mill. Anyway, Ault Road is the main road. So as you go up the hill, the first road is Ollie Davis, the second road is San Juan. I live on San Juan. Then there's Eagle Drive, then Comet Drive, then there might be another one, okay? But Ault Road is the main little road through the neighborhood. Not a subdivision, but a neighborhood. So I have to pass Ollie Davis Road on the right before I can get to San Juan Lane, next right, to get to my house. Well, at the corner of Ault and Ollie Davis is this gorgeous stone house. All right, it's a stone house on Ault Road. It's been there forever, and it's like empty. I could tell it was empty. And then all of a sudden there was people living there, and I know they were living there because when I passed that house on Halloween, they had a fire going on the deck. It turned out that it was in a grill and it was safe and it was whatever, but the next week the house was empty again. So the people that own the house, very nice couple, his name's Johnny, can't think of her name right off the top of my head. Anyway, Johnny thought that he's got this house, he might as well rent it. Well, the first week that the people were living there, they had a fire on the deck. That just doesn't work. So he kicked them out. And he's this nice older guy, and I was driving around, and so that was Halloween, and then I noticed it was empty again. And I didn't talk to those people while they were living there, so I didn't know who Johnny was at this time. I just knew that the house was empty. So I looked it up, and I thought I'd send a yellow letter. Well, it was to somebody in California, so I sent a letter and never heard from him. Fast forward to spring of the next year, and I've been driving by this stone house on Ault Road every single day since I moved into San Juan in 2009, and this was 2015. So for 6 years, I drove by this empty house at least twice a day. All right, like that's how close this house is to my house. I drove by it every day for 6 years while it was empty, except for like a month or so. So fast forward to the spring of the next year, and I was driving home one day for lunch, or I had to go to my house for some reason in the middle of the day. And when I passed by the stone house on Ault Road, the mowing crew was there. All right, the yard guys were out mowing the yard. So I pulled in the driveway and I was like, hey! Yelled too quick. Hold on. I was like, hey, who pays you? And they were like, oh, the guy's name's Johnny. He's really nice. And actually, he just lives across the street. I was like, he lives where? They were like, he lives in that subdivision across the street from San Juan. Oh, okay. So I left the stone house, and instead of turning right on San Juan, I turned left into a subdivision. The house was like the third house on the left. I pulled in, I walked up to the front door. I knocked on the front door. This is the only time I've ever been door knocking in my life. I knocked on the front door and Johnny answered. I said, hi, are you Johnny? He said, yes, I am. How can I help you? And I said, well, my name's Whitney. I just talked to the yard guys down at the stone house, and they said you owned it. And he said, yes, I do. Why? I said, well, I buy houses, especially in this area, and I'd like to buy it from you. And he was like, come on in. So he hollered at his wife. We sat down at the dining room table. He said, this lady thinks she wants to buy the stone house from us. His wife got all excited, but tried not to show that she was excited. And I talked to him for a little bit. Turns out they're an older couple. And while they were living in the stone house, they got old. And they couldn't walk up and down the steps anymore. And you had to walk up and down steps to get into the house. Like that the stone house kind of sits up on a hill, and so they couldn't walk up the steps to get into their house anymore. So they bought a house. They bought a brand new house all on one level in the subdivision across the street because they still liked the neighborhood, but they didn't want to live in the stone house anymore. Well, the bankers gave them a bridge loan so they could buy the new house in the subdivision, with the idea being that they would sell the stone house. Well, they let somebody live in the stone house, then they let a grandkid live in the stone house, then it went empty for a while, and they just decided that they didn't want to fool with it because this house had not been updated since like the 80s. Probably got updated in the 80s. And it wouldn't sell. It just plain old wouldn't sell. And they got tired of fooling with it. They got tired of agents jerking them around. They got tired of just dealing with it. And they decided that with their retirement money, they could live very skinny and make 2 house payments. He had some sort of a pension, and he had some sort of military retirement, and she had some sort of retirement from somewhere in Knoxville. And so they just decided that they would hunker down and basically skip their golden years so that they could make 2 house payments, because they didn't want to have the house go into foreclosure. They didn't want to have their credit ruined in case they needed to do something else. And they just figured that eventually the stone house would get paid off, and then they'd have it, and then maybe they could sell it when they owed a little bit less or something. Like, listening to their story broke my heart. It broke my heart. So the next day, I told them that I'd like to buy it from them, and I told them how I buy houses with a lease option, so I'd be taking over their payments, which is huge for them, because if they didn't have this payment every month, they wouldn't have to live in their retirement years on this skinny little check that they had left over after both house payments were due. I mean, they were getting like a huge raise just by me taking over the stone house payments for them. So they said that they'd be interested in that because that sounded amazing to them. They never thought about somebody taking over the payments. They did think that if they rented the house, then somebody would be making the payments for them, but they had a terrible experience being landlords. And I assured them that I was buying houses and I would be a good tenant. I even told them that I wanted to go look at the house so I could see what was wrong with it, and I would flip the house. This is the last house I flipped because I learned a lot of lessons on this one. So the next day, Johnny met me over at the house, and it had not been updated since the 80s. It was 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. The kitchen had white, like cheap cabinets, and a blue countertop. And not like pretty Tiffany blue, but like Tiffany blue that had been thrown up on. It wasn't pretty. It was not a good situation. And it was all overgrown with weeds, and it was just a disaster. But I decided that if I could take this 2-bedroom, 1 bath, because there was an unfinished like loft upstairs in the attic, kind of like what I'm sitting in right now. It was a loft. And if I could turn that into a bedroom and maybe even add a bathroom, I would have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was going to be worth a lot of money. A lot of money. So after I looked at the house that day, I told them I could pay for what they owed on the house, which was a relief to them because they were afraid that they'd have to put the money in and maybe pay an agent to take it off their hands. I said, I will start making your payments for you so you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to live so skinny. But since I'm going to flip it, I'm going to put my money in it. It's going to take me 6 months before I'll start making these payments. And I told them that second day that I met with them back in their kitchen at the kitchen table, and they looked at each other and they said, What do we have to lose? We signed the paperwork. The next day, I went down and pulled the permits. The following day, my guys were there like a wrecking ball, tearing that place apart. We did turn a 2-bedroom, 1-bath into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath by turning a closet upstairs into a bathroom. Turned out to be a really big bathroom, actually. And we made the whole loft into a bedroom. And then there was the 2 bedrooms and the 1-bath on the regular floor. We put nice cabinets in and put appliances in. I did spend about $40,000 flipping that house. And that was the last house I flipped because that was way too much money. I learned a ton of lessons on that. We could talk all day about the lessons that I learned at the stone house. But the important lesson for you is that there's sellers out there who need you. They would love for you to take over their payments. They would love to give you 6 months because they're going to pay for it for the next 6 months. But knowing that you're fixing their house, and we have all the paperwork to make sure that that's, safe and legal and everybody's happy, but that they only have to make 6 more months and then they're done. That stone house was amazing. I absolutely love it to this day, and I can't tell you how happy I was to put a big 4x4 pink Whitney Buys Houses sign in the front yard, because I'm telling you what, Ault Road, that main road through there, that is a thoroughfare in East Knoxville, and it got a lot of attention. I even got another house just because I had that sign in that yard in that neighborhood. All right. There's sellers out there who need you to help them. And whether you flip their house or whether you just take over their payments for them in 3 months instead of 6 months, it's all good. That house, when I was done with it, appraised for like 140, and now it's up above 150. I have 100 in it. I paid 60 for the house. They owed 60,000 on the house. I paid 60 for it on payments, doing a lease option. I put 40 in it, and I started renting it because I was going to make a big chunk of change, and I'm actually going to turn this house into a 1031 exchange when I do sell it, so that I can defer the taxes on my capital gains. And I got married in the middle of flipping that house, which is also a different story, but that's how it works. That's how you talk to sellers. That's how I go door knocking. That's how you find sellers who need you and want to work with you and are more than happy to do a lease option deal with you. It's a win-win-win for everybody. And that's what I like to teach in First Deal Done Fast. If you have any questions, let me know. But that is the story of the stone house on Ault Road. And I got lots more stories where that came from. See y'all later. Bye.